I'm an 18-year-old girl, and for most of my life, I thought my family was solid. It was just me, my mom 46, and my dad 48. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any family, but we always seemed close, or so I thought. Things started falling apart a couple of years ago when I was 16. My parents' marriage was already under strain, mostly because of financial problems. My dad had lost his job, and the stress of bills piling up turned into constant arguments. At first, they tried to shield me from it, but it wasn't long before every dinner turned into a shouting match. When they announced they were divorcing, I wasn't exactly shocked, but it still hit me hard. My dad moved out almost immediately, and for a while it was just me and my mom. I tried to keep things normal, but the atmosphere was heavy. It wasn't long before my mom started dating again. Within a year, she remarried. Her new husband, Rick, came with a 17-year-old daughter named Jessica. Jessica was the kind of person who lights up a room. She's bubbly, outgoing, and charming, basically everything I'm not. When they first moved in, I thought we might actually get along. I tried to bond with her, inviting her to hang out, but it felt like she was always a step ahead. She had this natural ability to draw people in, and before I knew it, my mom was completely enamored with her. At first, it was small things. My mom would rave about Jessica's accomplishments at dinner, and suddenly every family outing revolved around her. For my last birthday, my mom got me a cake and a sweater. When Jessica's birthday rolled around a couple of months later, they threw her a massive party and surprised her with a car. Not just any car, either, a shiny new one. I had never received anything close to that, not even when I graduated. I tried talking to my mom about how I was feeling, but she brushed it off. She said I was being ridiculous and that I needed to stop being jealous. That word, jealous, stuck with me. Was I jealous? I didn't think so. I just wanted to feel like I still mattered. Around this time, I started spending more weekends at my dad's place. I told him everything, and he was furious on my behalf. He reassured me that it wasn't all in my head and encouraged me to stand up for myself. But it wasn't easy. Rick had started influencing how things were run at home. He always talked about how blended families should work, but it was clear that his priority was Jessica. It felt like I was the odd one out in my own house. Family holidays became unbearable. Jessica was always the center of attention, while I was more of an afterthought. One Christmas, my mom canceled a vacation we had been planning for years, saying we couldn't afford it. Later, I found out the money had gone to fund Jessica's extracurricular activities. It was another slap in the face. Jessica, for her part, wasn't exactly innocent. She had a knack for manipulating situations to her advantage. Anytime there was tension, she'd play the victim, making it seem like I was the problem. I started keeping my distance, but that only made things worse. The more I pulled away, the more my mom seemed to cling to her. The breaking point came one evening when I overheard my mom talking to Rick. She was laughing and said something along the lines of, "I'm just so lucky to finally have the daughter I always wanted." I can't even describe what it felt like to hear that. I didn't confront her right away. I just went to my room, packed a bag, and called my dad. By the end of the week, I had officially moved in with him. Looking back, I think that was the moment everything changed. It wasn't just about Jessica anymore. It was about realizing that my mom didn't see me as a priority. Moving out was my way of taking control, but I knew it was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. Update 1. Edia. When I moved in with my dad, it felt like stepping into a whole new world. He didn't just welcome me with open arms, he made it clear that his home was now my home. He helped set up my room, even finding some old photos of us to hang on the walls. It was comforting, but there was no time to really settle in. The fallout from my decision hit fast. My mom's reaction came almost immediately. She called me non-stop, leaving voicemails accusing me of being ungrateful. She kept saying things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." She wasn't interested in understanding why I left. She was focused on making me feel guilty for doing it. Jessica wasted no time making her feelings known either. Within days of me moving out, she started posting little digs on social media. One of her posts was a picture of her sitting in the car my mom had bought her with the caption, "Guess I'm the only daughter now." Another was a group photo from a family dinner I wasn't invited to, captioned, "Family first." It didn't take long for mutual friends to notice, and soon the rumors started flying at school. The split wasn't just at home. Extended family members began taking sides too. Some of them reached out to me, saying they understood why I left and even admitted they'd noticed how my mom was treating Jessica differently. Others, though, sided with my mom, claiming I was being dramatic and that I should go back home to fix things. It felt like the entire family was being dragged into the mess. As if all that wasn't enough, my dad told me he was reopening the divorce proceedings. Apparently, there were financial disputes that hadn't been fully resolved, and my mom's recent spending, especially on Jessica, was raising red flags. My dad wanted to make sure I'd be taken care of, so he decided to fight for some of the assets my mom had claimed. Meanwhile, my mom made one attempt after another to get me to come back. She sent me long messages about how much she missed me, and how she missed me, and how she wanted things to go back to the way they were. But she never addressed the real issues. It was always about how I was hurting her feelings, not about the favoritism or the way she'd prioritized Jessica over me. My dad suggested I try therapy to process everything. And honestly, it was a good idea. Talking to someone neutral helped me untangle a lot of what I was feeling, but it also gave me the confidence to start standing up for myself. I stopped answering my mom's guilt-tripping messages, and when she brought up Jessica, I shut the conversation down. Jessica wasn't giving up her games, though. At school, she started spreading stories about how I'd abandoned our blended family because I couldn't handle sharing attention. Mutual friends were getting caught in the middle, and it felt like every hallway I walked down was filled with whispers. But by then, I was starting to realize that her manipulation only worked if I let it, so I stopped engaging, which seemed to frustrate her even more. The legal proceedings brought another layer of drama. My dad's lawyer wanted my perspective on what had been happening at home. I didn't hold back. I talked about the canceled vacation, the car, and even the overheard conversation where my mom had called Jessica the daughter she'd always wanted. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. During all this, my mom's obsession with Jessica became even more obvious. She started posting pictures online with captions like, "So proud of my beautiful girl," and couldn't ask for a better daughter. She never mentioned me, not once. It hurt, but it also validated my decision to leave. She wasn't just favoring Jessica, she was erasing me. My dad was my rock through all of it. He kept reminding me that I deserved better and that none of this was my fault. He also encouraged me to set boundaries with my mom, which turned out to be one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. The breaking point came when my mom confronted me in public. She showed up outside my school demanding to talk. She was loud enough to draw a crowd, and I could feel everyone's eyes on us. She kept asking why I was doing this to her, but I didn't take the bait. I calmly told her that I'd be happy to talk when she could respect my boundaries and left it at that. Walking away wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. After that, I stopped engaging with her entirely. I told her I wouldn't respond to any messages unless they were respectful. It was a tough stance to take, but it was the only way to protect my peace. My dad supported me every step of the way, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to regain control of my life. Update 2. Not long after I set boundaries with my mom, she stopped reaching out altogether. At first, I thought it was her way of giving me space, but it quickly became clear that she was ignoring me on purpose. She didn't even respond to my polite messages about logistics, like picking up the rest of my things from the house. It was a total shutdown, as if I'd been erased from her life. Her husband, Rick, wasn't as quiet. He sent me an email that was dripping with passive aggression. He wrote about how my decision to leave had torn the family apart and how I needed to grow up and understand the sacrifices my mom had made for me. The entire email was one big guilt trip. My dad read it before I did and advised me not to reply, so I didn't. Meanwhile, Jessica was having a field day. She doubled down on the rumors at school, telling anyone who'd listen that I had left because I couldn't handle sharing attention. Some people believed her, but most didn't. My closest friends stuck by me, and a few even started calling her out for her behavior. That didn't stop her, though. She seemed to enjoy the drama and the attention it brought her. While all of this was happening, my dad's legal team was digging deeper into my mom and Rick's finances. They discovered some pretty shady stuff, like how my mom had used marital assets to cover Jessica's car payments and fund Rick's failing business. There were even discrepancies in how the child support money was being spent. My dad was furious, but instead of reacting impulsively, he let his lawyer handle it. My mom, on the other hand, decided to take her grievances to social media. She posted a long, emotional status about how hard it was to be a mom and how ungrateful children can be. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our situation could tell she was talking about me. Some of her friends commented things like, "Stay strong, mama," and "Kids don't understand what we go through for them." I saw the post and rolled my eyes. It was just another way for her to play the victim. Despite all the drama, my friends were my rock. They kept reminding me to focus on myself and not let my mom or Jessica's antics get to me. Their support, along with my dad's encouragement, made a huge difference. I also started therapy, which helped me understand that my mom's actions were more about her own insecurities than anything I'd done. It wasn't an excuse, but it gave me some clarity. Then came Jessica's birthday. My mom threw her a massive party, like over-the-top massive. There was a DJ, catered food, and a professional photographer. Seeing the pictures online made me cringe. It was hard not to compare it to my last birthday, which had been a quiet dinner with just my mom and Rick. The blatant favoritism was impossible to ignore. During one of our late-night talks, my dad opened up about his marriage to my mom. He told me about how she'd always needed validation and how her insecurities often led her to overcompensate in ways that hurt the people around her. Hearing his perspective didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me understand her a little better. At school, Jessica's mask started to slip. During a conversation with some mutual acquaintances, she let it slip that she enjoyed being the favorite because it gave her power in the family. Someone recorded it, and the clip made its way around. It didn't completely turn people against her, but it definitely made her look bad. Around this time, I got a part-time job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a sense of independence I hadn't felt in a long time. Earning my own money felt empowering, and it kept me busy enough to avoid dwelling on the family drama. The extended family wasn't staying quiet either. One of my aunts, who had been mostly neutral up to this point, finally confronted my mom. She told her she needed to take a hard look at how she was treating me. My mom didn't take it well. According to my aunt, she doubled down, insisting that I was the problem. My mom's desperation hit a new low when she tried to bribe me with expensive gifts. She sent a package to my dad's house with a designer bag and a note saying she missed me. I sent the package back unopened. My dad told me he was proud of me for standing my ground. The legal case was the tipping point. My dad's lawyer presented the evidence of financial misuse and the court ruled in my dad's favor. He got more control over the remaining assets, and my mom was ordered to pay back some of the money she had misused. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a step in the right direction. Through it all, I stayed firm in my boundaries. My mom's attempts to manipulate or guilt me didn't work anymore. I wasn't looking for her approval or trying to change her mind. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free to focus on myself and my future. Update 3. The legal battle finally wrapped up and my dad came out on top. The court sided with him, granting him more financial security and partial custody rights over the remaining shared assets. It was a huge relief for both of us. The ruling exposed how my mom had misused funds to pay for Jessica's car, extracurricular, and even Rick's mounting debts. The details weren't pretty, but they were necessary to prove my dad's case. My mom, of course, didn't take it well. She lashed out, accusing me of helping my dad to humiliate her. She sent a long, angry email claiming I had destroyed her reputation and torn apart the family. There wasn't much I could say to that. It felt like she was more upset about being caught than about the impact of her actions. The court documents also made it clear how much of her spending had been directed toward Jessica. Seeing it laid out in black and white made me feel a mix of vindication and sadness. It wasn't just about the car or the party, it was about years of choices that showed where her priorities truly lay. Some of my extended family members couldn't ignore it anymore, but others still insisted I was the one in the wrong. The split within the family became more obvious, with aunts and cousins picking sides. Jessica's popularity took a hit too. Friends and even some family members started seeing through her manipulative behavior. The video clip of her bragging about being the favorite was still circulating, and the court revelations only added fuel to the fire. People who once saw her as charming were now keeping their distance. She didn't handle it well, and it started to show. One of my aunts, who had stayed neutral during most of the drama, reached out to me. She shared her own stories about my mom's favoritism and how it had affected their relationship growing up. Hearing her perspective made me realize that this wasn't just about me. My mom's patterns had been hurting people long before Jessica and I were in the picture. With my dad's constant encouragement and the support of my friends, I started to rebuild. My network felt stronger than ever. I leaned on my friends when things got tough, and they were always there to remind me that I was making the right choices for myself. I also kept busy with work at the bookstore and picked up some new hobbies, like painting. Therapy helped too. Slowly but surely, I began to let go of the guilt I'd been carrying since I left my mom's house. Things weren't quiet on her end, though. She sent me an email with an ultimatum: apologize and move back home, or she'd write me out of her life. It was her final play to regain control, but it backfired. I didn't respond, choosing instead to focus on maintaining my boundaries. My dad was proud of me for standing firm, and that was all the validation I needed. Jessica tried to stir up drama at school, cornering me in the hallway one day to accuse me of ruining their family. She was loud enough to draw attention, but instead of making me look bad, her meltdown backfired. A couple of classmates even stepped in to defend me, telling her to leave me alone. Watching her storm off was surreal. She was finally starting to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Rick's financial troubles were catching up to him. His business was failing, and creditors were closing in. My mom's household was under a lot of strain, but I didn't feel sorry for them. They had made their choices, and now they were facing the fallout. My dad kept me grounded through it all. He reminded me that I had a bright future ahead and encouraged me to focus on my education and goals rather than getting dragged back into the drama. His unwavering support gave me the confidence to take on leadership roles at school and at work. I started running a book club at the store and joined the student council. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was thriving. When my birthday rolled around, my dad and my friends threw me a quiet celebration. It was small, just a homemade cake, a few thoughtful gifts, and lots of laughter, but it meant everything to me. Sitting there with the people who truly cared about me, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. I wasn't the same person who had packed a bag and left my mom's house in tears. I was stronger, more independent, and finally at peace with my decision. The road ahead still felt uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I knew I had the support I needed to keep moving forward, and that was enough. Update 4. A few weeks after my birthday, I got an unexpected email from my mom. She invited me to a family dinner, saying she wanted to make amends. The wording was vague, but the invitation caught me off guard. My dad was immediately skeptical. He warned me to be careful, suspecting there might be ulterior motives behind her sudden change of heart. I agreed, but I figured I should go, if nothing else, to see if she was serious about repairing things. The dinner was at their house, the same one I had left months earlier. Walking in, it felt strange to see how little had changed. Jessica was already there, perched at the table with a smug smile like she was waiting for the show to begin. Rick greeted me stiffly, and my mom seemed overly cheerful, almost forced. The tension was palpable from the start. We sat down, and the conversation quickly took a turn. My mom started talking about how much she missed having me around and how hard it had been for her since I moved out. Rick chimed in with a speech about the importance of family and how I needed to let go of the past for the sake of everyone's happiness. It was clear they were trying to guilt-trip me, and Jessica was sitting there soaking it all in. When the conversation shifted to Jessica, my mom couldn't stop praising her. She talked about Jessica's school achievements, her upcoming plans, and even hinted that they were considering another special surprise for her. It felt like a replay of everything that had driven me away in the first place. I decided to cut through the noise and calmly laid out my boundaries. I told them I wasn't there to argue, but I wouldn't tolerate manipulation or favoritism anymore. My mom looked taken aback, and Jessica's smug expression faded. She interrupted, accusing me of trying to steal my mom's affection and ruining their family dynamic. Her outburst was loud enough to echo through the house. Rick tried to jump in, lecturing me about family values and the importance of forgiving and forgetting. I stayed calm and pointed out that he wasn't exactly the best example, given the financial mess he had contributed to during the divorce. That shut him up quickly. My mom tried to smooth things over by offering what I could only describe as a half-hearted apology. She said she was sorry if I felt neglected but refused to acknowledge Jessica's role in any of it. It was like she couldn't even see what had been happening right in front of her. I decided I'd had enough. I stood up and told them I was leaving. My mom started to protest, but I wasn't going to sit there and let them turn this dinner into another circus. I left without looking back, feeling more certain than ever that I'd made the right choice to move out. The aftermath was immediate. My mom bombarded me with angry messages, blaming me for the tension and accusing me of being ungrateful yet again. I didn't reply. A few days later, I started hearing from mutual acquaintances about what had gone down. Apparently, Jessica's meltdown at the dinner had spread through our school and community. People were finally starting to see her for who she really was, and the backlash was not pretty. Surprisingly, the fallout brought me closer to some of my cousins. A few reached out, sharing their own experiences of feeling sidelined by my mom and Jessica. Hearing their stories made me realize I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. We started talking more, and it felt good to have that kind of support from family members who understood where I was coming from. My friends and dad were also there for me, as they always had been. They reminded me how proud they were of me for standing up for myself, even when it wasn't easy. Their encouragement helped me shake off the negativity and refocus on the things that truly mattered. My mom's next move was to scrub me from her social media. She removed every picture, every mention of me like I didn't exist. It stung, but it also made it clear that she wasn't ready to change. She was still clinging to her version of events, where I was the villain and Jessica was the golden child. My dad, on the other hand, made a point to remind me how far I'd come. He told me how proud he was of my growth and resilience, and how he knew I had a bright future ahead of me. His words stuck with me, giving me the strength to keep moving forward. That dinner marked a turning point for me. I realized I didn't need my mom's approval to feel whole. I had my dad, my friends, and now a few cousins who had my back. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly independent. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And I knew that no matter what came next, I'd be ready. Update 5. After the chaotic dinner, my mom went completely silent. No calls, no emails, nothing. It was almost eerie. For the first time in months, there wasn't a single message blaming me for something or trying to guilt me into coming back. It felt like she had given up, but the calm was unsettling. Jessica's life wasn't going much better. Her manipulative nature had finally caught up with her. Friends at school stopped talking to her, and even some of her biggest supporters among the extended family distanced themselves. The stories about her behavior at the dinner had spread, and her reputation was in shambles. For someone who thrived on attention, the isolation must have been unbearable, but I wasn't going to let her drag me back into her drama. Rick's financial troubles reached their peak. His debts finally caught up with him, and he was slapped with a lawsuit from one of his creditors. The case caused a huge strain on their household, and the lavish lifestyle they'd been trying to maintain started to crumble. Jessica's special surprises and over-the-top birthday celebrations were gone. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, things were tense in their house, but I wasn't interested in getting involved. Around the same time, my dad started dating someone new. Her name was Claire, and she was genuinely kind. She didn't try to overstep or act like a replacement mom, but she was always supportive and encouraging. She'd join us for dinner sometimes and made an effort to get to know me without prying into the drama. It was a nice change, and it was clear my dad was happy. In therapy, I reached a point where I could finally let go of the resentment I'd been holding onto toward my mom. Forgiveness didn't mean I was ready to reconcile, but it freed me from the constant weight of anger. I realized I couldn't change her or make her see things my way, but I could move forward without letting her actions define me. School became my main focus, and the effort paid off. I earned a scholarship for academic excellence and received recognition from my teachers for some of my projects. It felt good to see my hard work paying off. My dad was over the moon, and Claire baked me a cake to celebrate. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something positive for my future. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my aunt. My mom had experienced a minor health scare and was in the hospital. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to shake her. My aunt thought I should visit, and after some hesitation, I decided to go. Walking into her hospital room was awkward. She looked surprised to see me but didn't say much. I sat down and we had a brief, polite conversation about her condition and how she was feeling. It wasn't a heartwarming reunion, but it wasn't hostile either. Jessica wasn't there, which didn't surprise me. From what I'd heard, she'd grown increasingly bitter about my absence and had started pulling away from everyone. When I visited the house later to drop off some things for my mom, Jessica barely acknowledged me. She seemed cold and distant, like she couldn't decide whether to ignore me or start a fight. I wasn't interested in either option. Before leaving the hospital, my mom and I had a candid conversation. I told her that I cared about her, but for any real relationship to work, things would have to change. I was clear about what I needed: respect, boundaries, and no more favoritism. She nodded along and even admitted she'd made mistakes, but she wasn't ready to take full accountability. It felt like she was trying, but not enough to bridge the gap between us. When I told my dad about the conversation, he gave me some advice that stuck with me. He reminded me that not all relationships could be repaired, and that was okay. What mattered was that I had tried. I couldn't control whether my mom changed, but I could control how I moved forward. A few months later, I moved out for college. Packing up my things and saying goodbye to my dad and Claire was bittersweet, but I was excited for the fresh start. As I settled into my dorm and began classes, I realized how far I'd come. The toxic environment I'd grown up in no longer had a hold on me. I was free to focus on my future and the life I wanted to build. Looking back, the experience taught me the value of self-respect and boundaries. It wasn't easy to stand up for myself, but it was worth it. To anyone in a similar situation, my advice is simple: prioritize yourself. You can't change other people, but you can choose to protect your own peace. Walking away isn't always easy, but sometimes it's the only way to truly move forward.